on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
NFL Scouting Combine coming up this week. Our own Josh Katzenstein and Herbie Teope will be all over Indianapolis, getting all the news, notes, and tidbits and such. An interesting report coming from one Ian Rappaport, of course, of the NFL Network, saying on Twitter, the Vikings are not expected to franchise tag quarterback Case Keenum, and he will be slated to hit free agency. And Jeff, I didn't realize this. You see something interesting from longtime NFL player personnel guru who also does plenty of work for NFL.com, Gil Brandt. What did he have to say?
Well, someone speculated about Kirk Cousins' landing spot, and Gil Brandt said that there's mutual interest between Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings, and he expects him to land in Minnesota, which I don't think a lot of people thought of, but it makes sense because all those guys on that list in Minnesota, there's no real perfect solution there between Case Keenum, Teddy Bridgewater, and Sam Bradford. Maybe they just go in a completely new direction with a team that's ready to win right now and get Kirk Cousins in there and try and make a run at the Super Bowl. I think this free agency period is going to be fascinating, not only because of where some of these players land, like Kirk Cousins, some of the quarterbacks, but I think, and it's been reported by a bunch of different outlets, there's going to be a lot of trades, and I think the Saints might be in that mix. I think the Saints might be in the trade market, and the reason I say that is, one, they've shown a propensity to make trades in the past. They've actually traded in years when a lot of teams are afraid to trade, and then two, it's not a great free agent market. And it's not a great draft for the needs the Saints have. So maybe the way to address them is through the trade market.
And yeah, I was alluding to earlier, NFL.com has a top 101 free agents to be, potentially. And Kirk Cousins is 1, Drew Brees is 2, Le'Veon Bell's 3. None of those are surprises. But Jeff, like you mentioned, a need spot. Numbers 4 and 5, DeMarcus Lawrence and Ziggy Ansah. Wouldn't be surprised if both of those would be franchise tagged. They would never hit the market. And so then the next possible player you might want to take a look at, Sheldon Richardson, they have him at 7th. To me, I think he's probably not the best fit for maybe this locker room unless you want to take a risk on him, because he's certainly had his fair share of issues with the Jets, got jettisoned off to the Seahawks. But we mentioned Case Keenum. He's at number 11 on this list. Number 12 on this list, Malcolm Butler. You heard of him maybe once or twice?
I think somebody on this radio program has a little bit of a man crush on Malcolm Butler.
I just think he fits perfectly. Why
he
not?
Does. I like the fit. The more I looked into it, the more I liked that move. I think he needs a change of scenery. I think that's pretty clear. I think the only problem is you just really have to do your due diligence and dig into what's going on there. Is he just the latest example of a guy that Bill Belichick soured on, or is there more to it? I think you've got to find that answer before you go signing him to a major deal.
Number 13 on that list is Tremaine Johnson. Of course, if you recall from last year, around this time in the offseason, the Saints were rumored to have wanted to trade for Tremaine Johnson. He's going to be gone from the Rams now that the Rams are trading for Marcus Peters from the Chiefs. And it doesn't sound like that the Saints were heavily involved in that, even though I know they wanted to draft him when he was coming out. But the reasons why the Chiefs are unloading him is kind of the same reasons why there was maybe a knock on Marcus Peters. Runs into problems with coaches. We've seen the antics that he's pulled, throwing the flag in the stands, leaving the field, and all this stuff. And there's probably some other things as well that maybe I don't even know about, but that's was part of the problem there. But as far as on this list, some interesting, I would say 23 and 24 on this list are going to get Saints attention as far as from fans. 23 is Jimmy Graham. I'd like to say, if I'm scanning through this correctly, they say he's the top tight end on the board, which doesn't surprise me. But at number 24, Kenny Vaccaro. And they're saying on here, billed as a hybrid safety corner linebacker early in his career. Vaccaro has never lived up to his potential in New Orleans. Will he find a system that hides his coverage weaknesses and plays to his strengths? And for some reason, slow weekend, I guess, I don't know. In the column I wrote about restricted free agency, I wrote that Kenny Vaccaro is likely on his way out. And then some Twitter feed took off with it. Pro Football Talk took off with it and wrote a post on it.
That's the world we're in.
And
good job, Larry.
I don't know how many times we've said this on the show through the past, as long as we've ever been on this show, we doubted and had doubts that Kenny Vaccaro would ever be back with the Saints after his contract year was up in 2017. I know I've written referencing to that. Jeff's written referencing to that. I don't know why that became a headline somewhere else, but I feel like he's gone and he's going to cash in somewhere.
That's the world we're in. I mean, some randomly people are under pressure to aggregate any kind of news, and aggregation carries the day in the NFL. There's a million sites that's all they do is cull for information, and they see that, and you're right. It's no news here. It's not been news, but all of a sudden it became news. And
yes, it's not fake news, but it's just not newsworthy. It's just it's my opinion, and it's something that we have informed opinions on.
Exactly.
But it's not like you're the only two that, I mean, think of the amount of people that we've had on. Sean Fazan, all the guys we've had on over the course of like the end of the season, everybody has almost been in unanimity about it. So it's not like this is slow weekend.
Going back to the Marcus Peters story, I think it's interesting or maybe informative that only two teams were in that trade market, the Niners and the Rams. Ultimately chose to agree to terms, I think, with the Rams on a deal. But a guy that talented only has two teams at a position in the NFL where it's a value position, the cornerback position. Hard to find guys like Marcus Peters. To me, that says a lot, that not more teams were interested in him once they knew he was on the trade block.
All right, let's take a break right here on the show because there's some more interesting names on this list I want to get to, and then we'll save our final segment of the show, talk a little bit more Pelicans. They're taking the court again tonight. They're going to take on the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix has lost 9 in a row, and yet, to me, I'm putting my air quotes up, this could be a trap game given how well and hard they had to play against the Bucks yesterday in Milwaukee. So we'll dive on that in the final segment. But let's talk more NFL free agency because it's going to be hot and heavy conversations, even though it's quote-unquote, air quotes again, illegal to talk about this at the NFL Scouting Combine, which we know will happen with just about everyone. So we'll talk about that and more coming up next here. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. Dunc Holder.